Welcome back to another Mast Cell 360 live show. I'm Jamie Fries-Miller, your host and health coach here at Mast Cell 360. And as you can see, I also have Cam with me today. She's another health coach here at Mast Cell 360 if you're not familiar with her. So I'm really excited to have Cam here today. And for those who don't know her or are more used to her being behind the scenes, I just want to give a shout out to her right now. She put together today's presentation and is often the brains behind the slides for our other shows. So thank you so much for all the work you do here at Mast Cell 360, Cam.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. So as you guys can see, today's show is going to be on mast cell flare symptoms and tips to calm mast cell flare-ups. And we thought this was a good timely topic given that it's January, the holidays just passed, and a lot of times, I don't know, most people flare usually after eating foods they don't normally eat. Traveling can cause flare-ups. There's a lot of things that can cause flare-ups. So this is hopefully a timely topic for you guys. While we wait for people to jump on, please feel free to put in the comments where you're tuning in from. That's how we can kind of see who's on with us today. And before we jump into the material, I'm just going to give our quick disclaimers. Okay, so today's presentation is for informational and educational purposes. It is not meant to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent illness. So please be sure to discuss any health recommendations with your healthcare provider. And just a reminder that some of the links shared during this show or on our website are affiliate links, which means Mast Cell 360 may take a very small commission if you purchase through our links. We only recommend products that we love, use personally, or use in the Mast Cell 360 clinic. So if you go ahead and use those, just know that they're helping to provide free resources such as these weekly shows. I see people coming in from Colorado, Netherlands, California, Kansas. Thank you guys for being with us today. Okay. Just some quick reminders. If you are new to this area, Mast Cell 360 is over on Substack. So we do have a free option, no need to pay for anything, but you'll get our weekly newsletter, you'll get recipes, and then there's a paid option which comes with things like the ability to submit questions for our live Q&A shows ahead of time, other bonuses such as practitioner tip emails every week. Cam, can you think of any other good bonuses that come with the paid piece of Substack?
Yeah, you covered a lot of them. And then for the founding members, they get a 10% discount on supplements, on courses, and also on strategy sessions.
Yeah, so some good stuff there. And again, that small fee helps contribute to all of the resources that we put out. Okay, and then one other quick announcement. We have a free webinar coming up. It's called The 3 Secrets to Stabilizing Your MCAS, and that is going to take place on January 22nd. So you can sign up for that at mastcell360.com/3 secrets. Okay. So today we are going to talk about what are MCAS flares, what are some symptoms of MCAS flares. This can look different for everyone, of course. What to include in your personal flare plan, and some tips for flare plans and calming flares. Okay, Cam, do you want to start us off with kind of going over like what is a mast cell flare? I feel like most people on today's call are probably familiar with that if they have MCAS and have either been in a flare or are currently in a flare. I kind of think of the beginning pieces of this is like where our baseline is kind of flared and then we have extra flares on top of it until we can kind of learn that stabilization piece and get a new baseline.
Yeah, and that's actually a really helpful way to think about it is everybody has their baseline, and what we work to do over time is lower that baseline so that you have a bigger and bigger buffer. So basically a flare is when you go beyond kind of where your baseline is, and the symptoms of those can vary depending on, who you are. You have mast cells in every tissue in your body except for some of the avascular spaces like your retina, and they release, over 1,000 mediators. So depending on where your mast cells are active, what mediators you're releasing, you can have a lot of different symptoms. But some of the things that increase those symptoms can be stress. This is one that a lot of people don't think about. Mold exposures, eating against your food intolerances, toxins like scents or air pollution. Mold can be included in that toxin bucket as well. Weather and temperature changes can put stress on your mast cells, injuries and illness, pollen and allergy season, wildfire smoke, tick and mosquito bites, and then, of course, medical dental procedures and things like that. So basically, your mast cells are looking for changes and they're communicating that with the rest of your body.
Yeah. And a lot of these, it's like stress is at the top, right? And stress, a lot of people think of as like mental stress, but I like to remind people that there's like physical stressors on the body. And so if you get exposed to mold and your pathways, your detox pathways are trying to get that cleared out faster, right? That can be a stressor on the body that stressor is not there all of the time. So a lot of mast cell activation syndrome is like figuring out your triggers, right? If we can reduce the triggers, then we can reduce the flares.
Yeah.
So within a flare, right, the symptoms range really widely. And even within mast cell activation syndrome, your symptoms range very widely. So I think the most important thing is like what Cam was saying is like we all have a baseline. We have to kind of understand what our baseline is, what our individual symptoms are, and what our triggers are. So within the flare, some people could be hives and anaphylaxis, but for other people it could be increased brain fog, fatigue, gastrointestinal issues, right? So wide range there. Usually it's a worsening of potential. It could be new symptoms, but it could also be a worsening of existing symptoms. So maybe you kind of have a baseline fatigue, but it's really, really bad when you're in a flare. Or maybe you get, I don't know, for me, my current flare symptom is air hunger. So when I first learned about mast cell activation syndrome, I had air hunger all of the time, multiple times a day, almost every single day, right? Now it's my flare symptom. When I'm in a flare, the air hunger comes back, but I lived day-to-day life without air hunger now. And that's from working on the stabilization pieces, working on the detox pieces to get to a new baseline where I don't have air hunger every day. Cam, do you think it would be helpful for you to share kind of what your flare symptoms are so people can start thinking about what that looks like for them maybe?
Yeah, mine really range and it depends because I've dealt with over the last several years and it's different for everybody. And I've had to peel back layers and stuff, but depending on, what it is that's triggering my mast cells. If it's mold that's triggering my mast cells, I swell. And I just don't feel good. If it's histamine, I get headaches, I get more fatigue. If it's oxalates, there's fatigue and gritty eye secretions and things like that. And then sometimes with the salicylates, it's something different. So it really depends on what it is that's triggering my mast cells. But also, I think, as Jamie was saying, with the baseline, as I've pulled back and I've started healing, I'm still on my healing journey. I've only been out of mold for about 2 years. And so on that healing journey, as you pull those layers back, you get better and better. And what happens is the things that you used to live with on a daily basis, those kind of become your trigger symptoms. Like those are the things that you can notice when you're having a flare. They start coming back. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, and I think what you said was also really helpful to think about is that different triggers could have different symptoms. So you could be like when you start learning what your reaction is to certain triggers, you'll know what might have caused the flare too. And you can think about it. Because if you just kind of don't know what your individual triggers are and you're just very symptomatic to everything right now, it's going to be much harder. And there's tips that we're going to share today that can help bring all of that down. But once you start learning what your individual triggers are, you can be like, oh, I ate too many oxalates. That's why I'm having this symptom. And that's where you'll know it can kind of direct where to work at any given time.
Yeah. And if you keep just a very simple like journal day to day, it doesn't need to be like writing every single thing that you do down every single day. But if you do something different or you do something new, just jot that down. And then if you have some kind of response, whether it's you get better or you feel a little bit worse, write that down, because over time you'll start seeing patterns and stuff like that. It's a very easy way to just kind of track things.
Yeah, we call that like a changes journal. So it's more like the new things that you're trying or stopping. So like the other day, my sleep's not been where I want it to be, right? There's always going to be something to work on. And so I started thinking, there was one day where I skipped my green tea. And I know green tea is higher histamine. I'm on a place in my healing journey where I've been adding it back in, either a green tea or a matcha, and because I don't do coffee. And so I skipped it that day just because life was busy. I never made it. I slept better that night, which made me think, okay, that's a change. And therefore I can track that and experiment. Maybe it's the green tea. Maybe it's the little bit of caffeine in my, everyday life, to start experimenting and testing. So what Cam was saying is, because we have a question here, I want to throw it up. Do you have any recommendations for tracking symptoms and exposures? Finding that to be the hardest part. So whether it's an app on your phone or just a handwritten journal, right? Somewhere where you keep track of like a date. Usually it's the date of something, any change out of your normal, ordinary day-to-day life. Maybe it's a new food. Maybe it's a place you've been. Maybe it's a new supplement you've tried. Maybe it's a new nervous system tool, right? And then give yourself time to reflect on how that change may have affected your baseline. So that's kind of like our go-to, is what we call a changes journal. Okay. All right. So what is a mast cell flare? You want to do it?
Yeah, sure. So you can think of it kind of like, I've got the little sparkler up there, and that's just a spark. And a spark is something that can light a fire, and it can turn into something that just smolders and kind of fades away, or it can turn into something that's like a forest fire. And what we would like to do with that mast cell flare is keep it from ending up obviously in the forest fire territory. So what happens when you have a mast cell flare is that you have something that triggers your mast cells. Your mast cells release some of those mediators, and then those mediators turn around and they trigger more mast cells, and they release more mediators, and those mediators release more triggers. And it just kind of keeps going in this circle. So what you're really trying to do with a flare plan is interrupt that cycle, calm everybody back down so that you can return to that baseline a lot quicker.
Yeah. Okay, so what is a flare plan? A flare plan is a list of tools that you can use when you're in a flare to help, like what Cam just said, interrupt the cycle that is currently taking place in your body. So it might be supplements, it might be nervous system supports, it might be medications, it might be foods, it might be other action steps that you want to take. So ask yourself, like, what can you do safely, or what can you safely take if you are in a flare? So this is going to be very individualized, person to person, but ultimately it's going to be a list of tools that you were going to find helpful. So obviously, why should you make a flare plan? If you are somebody, who needs somebody to help take care of you at this stage in your healing, a flare plan would be really helpful to have everything in one place so that either you or somebody who's helping has that clear plan to follow when you're feeling, tired or struggling to make decisions. It's also a way to help with triggers that, like preemptively. Is that the right word? It was coming out of my mouth. I'm like, preemptively use, right? If you know you have triggers coming. So this is like what Cam has on the slide here, dental or medical procedures. We can take things prior to help calm the mast cells down. We can do extra nervous system work to kind of make the body feel really safe going into something, right? If we're stressed going into a dental procedure, it's likely we're going to flare more than if we can do some calming exercises to mediate some of that stress prior to it taking place. And then you can also create a kit. So it's one thing to have a list, but it's another thing to kind of have all of those tools all in one place. Like maybe it's certain supplements that you keep. I have like a little mini flare kit that I keep in my purse that includes like a homeopathic, so histaminum. We can share a link for that if we need to. I'm just throwing things out that I have in my own flare plan. I also love like these little ginger tablets because I'm more prone to GI distress in my flare-ups sometimes as well. So having those kits like ready and in certain places, whether it's your nightstand if you have nighttime flares, or maybe you keep one at the office, maybe you keep one in your car, maybe you keep one in your purse. So just having the physical things, having the physical tools and the list all in one place ready to go. So it just makes it easier when you're feeling crummy and tired.
I would say too, on that second point with the, like, for example, triggers that are coming up. We have dental and medical procedures on this slide, but that can be really anything. Like if you're going somewhere to a friend's house, or you're going to eat a little bit off of where you normally eat, or you're traveling, or things like that, they can be preemptive for all of those things. Because if you give your body that support ahead of time, if you do have a flare, it's going to be much smaller. You're going to get on top of it sooner too. And you
Yeah.
might even be able to prevent it entirely.
Yeah, it's a really great point. Like eating out, I don't take DAO every day now, but that's one of the things that I keep in the purse one. Because if I'm eating out, I know it's going to be higher histamine. So I'm definitely taking DAO when I eat out. So yeah, that's a great point. It's not just dental procedures. It could be a friend's house that has scented things. Like ideally we wouldn't go, or we'd meet that friend somewhere else. But the hair salon is a very toxic place. And so if you know, like you're going to go to the hair salon, and even if you don't dye your hair, but other people in the hair salon are getting their hair done, preemptively taking some mast cell supports. I have totally done that before. I'm not lying. It's a really good point. Okay. So Cam, what should people include in their flare plan?
Yeah. So what you include specifically is going to look different for each person, but here's like some general guidelines. So you're going to want to put down like your known triggers and the flare symptoms to watch for. And part of that is just by, writing it out and listing it out, it becomes very clear. Pardon me just a second. Sorry about that. But just by knowing that what you are reacting to or what your triggers are, that kind of gives you that step back where you can start things if you see them coming. And then specific steps that you're going to take. These are a lot of things that, we might not necessarily think of. So making sure that you're drinking more water, because that helps flush toxins out of your body. It's a natural antihistamine. Boosting electrolytes, because your body's going to be using more of those in a flared up state. Getting more rest. That doesn't necessarily have to be sleep, although more sleep is good. It can just be laying down, using something like, the new Calm app, or just even laying there with resting and breathing. All of that can be really helpful. And then you're going to want to make sure that you talk to your practitioner about supplements and medications that you can increase during a flare. And I would talk to them, about dosages, talk to them about how long you want to take them, all of those kinds of things. And then some favorite nervous system tools or exercises that you use. These are the things that you actually enjoy doing that help you calm your body down. A lot of people, we don't necessarily think of the nervous system as important, but it's incredibly important. It's actually the street signals that are allocating all of those resources and deciding where those resources are going to be used. So if you're in fight and flight, it's all going to go to, keeping your body prepared to run, keeping your body prepared to fight, all of those kinds of things. Whereas if you're calmer, it's going to prioritize sending resources to things like digesting and healing. So just getting your nervous system to calm down can really help with a flare. And then you're going to want to include foods that you tolerate really well. And this again is going to be different for everyone. So if you know you have, problem with histamine, you're not going to want to be stretching your histamine bucket at this point. This is when you dial it back and you really kind of have a clear parameter of around what supports you and what pushes you outside of that support circle. So you want to write those things down. You can specify whether those foods are cooked and blended, because cooked and blended is often a lot easier to digest when we're flaring. You can include some recipes, that are super simple and easy for you to make, so you don't have to try and come up with what you want to eat. Or you can even give those recipes to someone who's helping you. And then you can even maybe keep like a couple of days worth of frozen meals in your freezer for when you start flaring, so that you're kind of ahead of it. Or you can even have somebody come in and help maybe prepare some of those and put them in the freezer, so that it's really easy for you to get to.
Yeah. Some additional things that you might want to include.
Yeah, so troubleshooting tips for your biggest issues. So again, this is going to be a little bit different for everybody. So if you have headaches and that's one of your problems, or migraines and that's one of your problems, what are the things that help you most with those symptoms? If you have constipation, it's going to be a little bit different than, if you have diarrhea or loose stools. If you have a really hard time sleeping, what are the things that you can do that support you sleeping better? And if you have hives, what can you do to take for that? So whatever your biggest issues are, write those out, and then write down next to them what the things are that help you most. And you want to try most of this ahead of time. It's not necessarily a good idea to be trying all of this when you're already in a flare. And then you can write down, who you can reach out to for support and help. And that can be friends, family, neighbors, people in the area. And I know this can be kind of an uncomfortable thing for a lot of people to ask for help, but most of us would be more than happy to help a friend out if they asked. And we're just basically giving them the opportunity to do the same for us. And then, of course, you want to include a list of your medical providers and when you need to seek emergency care.
Okay. And actually, I just want to go back because we do have a question on, and I didn't say this, but for people who have questions, we'll get to as many questions as we can throughout the presentation and at the end if we have some extra time. Please just keep your questions on the topic of today's show. So flaring, please ask it only one time. We'll do our best to get to them in the order that we see them. And then please understand that we're unable to just answer in-depth personal health questions. So we have a whole blog on antihistamines. So at the bottom of the screen, mastcell360.com/antihistamines, because that's often one of those tools that people might want in their kit. Again, like Cam said, you want to have tested something prior to before. So Chantal is asking, is Pepcid Complete a good choice for an H1 blocker? It's a chewable, so you can adjust the dose. If you've tried this, Chantal, and it has worked for you with the desired effect, then that means it's probably a tool that you may want to have. We don't know enough about your individual case to say whether or not it is a good choice, but you may want to read that blog that's at the bottom of this slide for more information to make that to use your discernment if it's a good tool for you. But yes, H1, H2 blockers are often used in this case, whether some people in our community are on them daily right now. And what we use them, how we use them in that way is what we call, it's like a bridge. It is a tool in the moment to get that baseline down so that you can then onboard additional like either supplements or whatever it is that you individually need to get to the next part of your healing journey. So if you're using them daily, like I said, most of the time we find you don't want to be on them long term, but for an amount of time on your healing journey, they can provide the desired effect. But then there are some people in our community who may use those H1, H2 blockers preemptively or in a flare. So I kind of am in that category now where I am on my own healing journey. I live in Maryland. In the summer, we eat blue crabs. I am 100% taking a Pepcid and a Claritin before I eat seafood. It's just like I've tested it when I'm not in a flare. It's helpful. So now I know like when and how to use them, right? So that's a lot of this is like when you're not in flares, see how you tolerate things, and then just speak with your licensed medical provider to decide if you can increase that tool during the flare. Okay. Thanks for asking that question. All right. So how do you create a flare plan? So like Cam was saying, having this all in one place is really good. And physically writing it down can be a helpful exercise for you to kind of see what are your triggers and what are your symptoms, right? So having that resource, maybe it's a document on your computer that you can print out and keep on the inside of your like medicine cabinet, but having it again all in one place. So like I was saying, with like something like the antihistamines, discussing those medications and additional supplements and the doses that you can increase, right? Can you increase the dosage when you're in a flare? And then also speaking to your provider about understanding, okay, if you are in a flare, how long should you increase it for? And then also discussing with your provider who knows your case, okay, in addition to medications and supplements, what are some other helpful strategies? And then also understanding when is your individual symptom become like the need, when might you need emergency help? So if you're somebody whose flare includes anaphylaxis and you don't have an EpiPen, right, that would be an emergency situation. But if you know you have a history of anaphylaxis, that would be a great opportunity to talk to your medical care provider about having an EpiPen in your flare kit, right? Printing that out and then again, hanging it somewhere where you can find. And then, like I said, having maybe a physical kit with those medications and supplements nearby where you have your printed flare plan. Okay, so this is a little brain break that was a lot of information. I'm going to answer some questions, but I had an interesting conversation with a client the other day. In all of this is a gentle reminder to try things ahead of time and go really slow, right? Our motto here at Mast Cell 360 is slow is fast and fast is slow. So my client the other day was kind of in that beginning stages where they just felt like their baseline was flare, right? And they're like, well, if I'm in a flare, should I try the baking soda? And I was like, it was kind of like a mind game, right? Because they felt like they were in a flare, whereas I was suggesting a new tool that might be really helpful in a flare, right? So this is kind of where the individual process comes in, because there may be some tools that you learn about today that you haven't tried yet. And this is just like a very gentle reminder to go really slow. More isn't always better in the case of MCAS. Okay, so let's see. We can answer some questions.
While you're looking through questions, Jamie, I'm going to throw up a helpful thing for people who are wondering, like, how slow do you need to go? How do I do that exactly? Things like that. You can find another live that we did some time ago at mastcell360.com/go slow. And that just talks about how, when you're sensitive, how you want to start things. And we say, sprinkles and drops. And the idea behind that is that if you do have a reaction to it that's not helpful, it's going to cause less of that reaction and you're going to return to your baseline sooner. And it also gives your body time to adjust. You'd be surprised at how many things can actually be onboarded if you go slow enough. And how slow enough is different for each person.
Okay. So Stephen's question is, can flares make you react to things that are meant to help you? Chronically ill, but since COVID infection over the holidays, feeling like even reacting to the ketotifen I'm taking to help. So of course, Stephen, just a reminder that we're unable to answer this like without knowing your individual case. This is not meant to treat, diagnose, cure, prevent. So we have to answer this generally speaking. But Cam, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'd love to. First of all, I'm really sorry that you're going through that. I know it's difficult. Anytime you get sick, it can cause a flare. Colds and illnesses, it doesn't matter. And yeah, it doesn't matter what it is, it can cause a flare. COVID's particularly difficult for a lot of people. Um, and with the ketotifen, if it's something that you've been taking and now you're reacting to it, it could potentially be like, I don't know if you're having it compounded. I don't know if it's coming as tablets from outside the US. So it kind of depends on like what type you're taking. I would first of all look at maybe what you're having compounded with, because it's not generally the medication. Generally, it's what's in the medication. Taking a look at that. And sometimes it's helpful to just kind of like backtrack things, see if you can play around with it a little bit and see if there's a dose where it's going to be better for you if you take a little bit less or if you take a little bit more. So work with your provider on that specifically. And then just working on pulling off some of that stress, getting more rest, making sure that you're eating really cleanly so that everything can calm down together.
Yeah, and two, if it was that you were taking, just generally speaking, if you were taking ketotifen beforehand and then when you got the infection, if you increased it too fast, like that could have been something as well. Just like thinking, oh, this is a support that I had, and this is why we were saying, test the amounts that work for you beforehand and work with your individual provider who knows your case to decide at what dosages. So yes, the ketotifen might have been helping, but if you increased it, and again, we don't know that, it could have been a situation of increasing too fast as well. Okay. Leaf Girl of Ohio is saying, what about EMF exposure? I felt better in the mountains in a home that was inundated with Wi-Fi. So yeah, it can definitely be an individual trigger for some people. This one often, like, day-to-day life, most people have their routine EMF exposure. And then when they go out of it, they recognize that maybe they were sensitive and didn't realize it. Or sometimes they'll go into like a city or spend time in a hotel where there's a lot more EMF and have really horrible sleep as well. So it could definitely be a trigger for some people.
Yeah, and if it improves when you leave and you're still surrounded by Wi-Fi, like I can't tell if that question was asking if, they left one environment that had a ton of, and the new environment had a ton of Wi-Fi, but they felt better. If you leave any environment and you feel better, even when there's other triggers, there's something going on in that environment that you left. And in our population, it's generally mold.
Yeah.
Not always, but often.
And we can kind of call that like a sabbatical if like you're wondering if your environment is causing issues, right? Going somewhere for like 2 weeks and coming back and seeing. Okay. Cam, do you see one that you want to answer before we kind of finish the presentation?
No, the COVID and the ketotifen one was the one I wanted to answer, and that was already brought up. So
okay. Yeah, we'll get back to more questions, but I want you guys to kind of have some additional tips. So obviously, if you're in an emergency, call 911. We also, we get a lot of questions about like ER visits or like procedures that are unavoidable, right? So one of the resources that we recommend is the ER response plan, and you can find that at tmsforacure.org/ER. And this is from the Mast Cell Disease Society. I think it was originally the Mastocytosis Society, and they've switched to realize that there's a lot more mast cell disorders than just mastocytosis. So you can find that at their website. And then obviously for non-medical emergencies, but with medical concerns, contact the provider who's overseeing your case. And for more on, flare plans, we do have a whole blog on this as well that you can find at mastcell360.com/flare plan. Okay, so how kind of, if you're in a flare, right? Cam, what should people do first?
First of all, if you know what's causing the flare, pause it. And obviously, this is something that you're going to need to work with on with your practitioner on if you're in some kind of an acute situation where you need to be on that medication or doing whatever it is that's causing that. Work with your practitioner closely. But if it's a supplement that you're trying or something new, some new place that you've been, things like that, and you know that's what's triggering it, pause it. Wait for those symptoms to calm back down. And then something that we find incredibly helpful, and we always love it when there's like something that's easily accessible, it's inexpensive, it doesn't tend to cause a lot of problems for people. This is something that you might consider and talk to your practitioner about, and that's just bicarbonates. And that's basically baking soda. You can also get potassium bicarbonate and other minerals that are bonded to bicarbonates, but baking soda, plain old baking soda off the shelf at your grocery store. A lot of people find about a quarter of a teaspoon in 6 to 8 ounces of water helpful. And pH Adjust is another option that has some other bicarbonates in it as well. And then with high blood pressure, just because you generally want to avoid that sodium piece being so out of balance, something like trisalts might work better. And if this is something that you haven't tried before, start with a sprinkle and a little sip. And when we say sprinkle, we mean like a fairy dusting in your water and then taking one sip and giving it some time to see how your body responds. And you also want to do like one change at a time. You don't want to try a whole bunch of new things all at once because then you don't know what's helping and what's not helping. And then the nervous system calming. You'll hear us talk about this probably ad nauseum because it's such a big part of healing. And it's part of our daily healing protocols, but it's also especially helpful during flares. And then getting rest, we've already talked about that. Nap, sleep more, lay down and relax, do whatever you can to pull some of those stressors off of your body.
Yeah. And then we have some more tips. So hydrating, I feel like is like super, super like not valued, right? But I like on a day-to-day basis, I can immediately feel the difference at the end of the day when I'm like, oh, you know what? I really did not drink enough. And our kind of baseline is half your body weight in ounces. So that's kind of like your baseline of like, okay, I should drink that amount per day. If you tolerate them, boosting electrolytes, your body can use more in a flare. So, electrolytes are one of those things that when people start adding in, a lot of times they react to usually because of something like oxalates. The body will oxalates bind to like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, right? And so the body's often deficient in them if we have mold and oxalate issues. So we need to work as best as we can and as slow as we need to get those back into the body, right? Eating for support. So obviously avoiding triggers, eating as cleanly as possible. And then like it says on the slide, consider cooked or liquid or blended food. So, just eating in general is a very energy intensive process. And then also it can produce a lot of excess histamine regardless of the foods that you are eating. So by eating really clean and eating like liquid diet for a little bit, that's going to help just kind of give the body the rest it needs. This one goes without saying, lower stress. So I think the ones on the slide are really good. Avoiding traffic, turning off the news, holding good boundaries. Don't talk about politics with your spouse or friends when you're in a flare. Just really protecting your space in that. And then increasing those helpful supports. So again, understanding what your individual supports are. But in general, like if kind of the top ones are avoiding the trigger, extra hydration, extra nervous system, and extra rest. So if you can't tolerate any supports and you just are kind of stuck, right? This is why we recommend nervous system on a daily consistent basis so that you have the tools to pull from when you're stressed. It's going to be really hard to implement nervous system work if you've never done it before when you're in a flare. And so our goal is to have clients create a daily routine of nervous system work so that they know the tools that they enjoy so that they can bump those up during that. And then, as we've said before, really boosting the hydration and boosting the rest. Again, if you can't tolerate anything else, those are going to be your absolute go-tos. Anything to add there, Cam?
Yeah, I would just basically say that as far as support for anything, really, we can't skip the foundational stuff. That's really like where everything else builds off of. So really focus on that. And that one piece with the hydration and making sure that it's filtered, that's basically so that your body's not having to process the toxins that are often in tap water. So anytime you can pull some of that stress off and add some extra support, you're going to recover a lot faster.
Yeah. Okay, so the next few slides are like generalization. Again, you're going to need to work with somebody to decide whether or not these are right for you. So we alluded to those medications, those H1, H2 blockers that you can get over the counter. So like over the counter allergy meds like Claritin, Pepcid, Zyrtec, right? But working with your provider to make sure that you know how to use those and when to use those. Ketotifen and cromolyn sodium are the two prescriptions that may be recommended for mast cell calming. Again, you're going to need a prescriber for those, and some tolerate them, some don't tolerate them, right? Some might tolerate just one and not the other. So learning about them and using them prior to a flare. As Cam mentioned, those bicarbonates or trisalts. So if you don't have high blood pressure, sodium bicarbonate is great because most people have it in their cabinet right now. Trisalts are the potassium bicarbonate, I think calcium bicarbonate, and sometimes magnesium bicarbonate. There's a few different brands out there with different combinations of those bicarbonates in there. And just, again, testing them prior to a flare. Another one is DAO. So this is the one that I mentioned. Diamine oxidase is the enzyme that breaks down histamine in the body. So this one I keep in my flare kit for when I eat out. It can just help reduce the histamine in the body. Perilla and Quercetin are our first go-tos for mast cell stabilization in our clinic. But if you have salicylate intolerance, these would not be the right tools for you. And then anytime we can support the gut, it's going to help stabilize the mast cells because, like I was saying about the digestive process, it's just really energy intensive and can produce histamine in and of itself, regardless of the food you're eating. Our holy trinity is tributyrin X, HCl, betaine HCl with pepsin, and enzymes. Our favorite is from Healthy Gut called Holozyme. And we could put links in there for you guys for those as well. But again, doing them prior to a flare, getting these tools on board so that you can know if you need to up them or not during a flare. And then again, electrolytes are, as I was saying, when mycotoxins and oxalates are at play, we often go really low in electrolytes, or maybe we've swapped over to RO water because we're reacting, as Cam was saying, to things in tap water. So we remove everything from it, but we also remove the minerals from the water then. So we do have to make sure we're adding those minerals back. And when the body reacts to them, it's often a sign that we actually need them. We just need to learn how to onboard them in the way that the body feels safe doing it. We like concentrates, mineral drops, but there are other options out there like pH adjust, trisalts, or kind of finding a combination of the individual minerals that you kind of need and tolerate. So working with a provider to find out what you may be deficient in so that you can add in more of what you individually need. We have a question here. Is there there are more specific ratio of particular electrolytes that work better. So this is highly individualized. Unfortunately, if you have, you're dumping salt onto your food, you may end up, having an increase in sodium and a decrease in, therefore, an imbalance in the sodium potassium. So you may need to find that you add a little bit more potassium in. So working with somebody who can help you find out the specific ratio for your individual needs. Okay. Let's see. Cam, when should people use their Flare plan?
Well, ideally, you're going into situations that might trigger you and you use it preemptively. But if you're going to do that, you probably want to start it, a day or two before. You're obviously going to want to do it while you're going through that. So if you're traveling, it's going to be like the whole time you're traveling. If it's a procedure, it's going to be, a few days before the procedure, during the procedure. And then basically what you want to do is use them afterwards until you return to your baseline. And once you've returned to your baseline, you can, drop back off and go back to your daily, whatever it is that you do to manage and keep yourself functional and working like a human being. And then if it's something that's kind of taken you by surprise, because life happens. Sometimes we, run out of supplements. Sometimes we're not great about taking care of ourselves. Sometimes, we just have an exposure we didn't know about, yada, yada, yada. So as soon as you experience an increase in symptoms, you can start with that Flare plan stuff. And getting on top of things quickly can really help interrupt that cycle so that it doesn't become that more and more reactive. And if you do it right away, sometimes it's a matter of, even an hour or 2 hours and you're feeling better versus days, or it's a matter of a day or two instead of weeks or months of dealing with it. So the sooner the better. I don't know that you can do it too soon, but you can definitely start later than was optimal. But even then, it's still going to help. So even if you've been in a flare for say a week and you're like, I just don't know what to do, starting some of that flare plan a week later or 2 weeks later, that can still help with those symptoms and calming things down and getting your body back to a baseline for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so where can you get some of the support? So we have a supplement store. You can find the link store.mastcell360.com, where we've kind of vetted pretty much most of the supplements on there are void of mast cell triggering excipients and fillers. There are a few on there because in some cases we could not find an option that didn't have one of those fillers in there. Often, if somebody's reacting to a lot of supplements or they don't realize that they're reacting to supplements, if we kind of can find a few safer swaps and remove some of those excipients, it's okay to have one or two in there. It's kind of, the dose is the poison, right? So a lot of people are like thinking in the black and white of when it comes to supplements, when there's a lot of gray area in between and it's highly individualized. So we went over some of the supplements that we recommend today, the pH Adjust, sodium bicarbonate, some of the digestive supports on there, like the Holozyme. You can find those all on our store from the brands that we trust with, again, like I said, those fewer mast cell triggering ingredients. If you're curious too, kind of on the mast cell supporting side, and you really want to learn more about the supplements, we do have a top 8 course. Cam, is there a slide on that? Now I might be jumping ahead. No, we don't have it. Okay. Yeah. So we do have a top 8 course. Let me see if I have a banner for it right here. It is mastcell360.com/master-class. This is kind of like our go-to for in-clinic, like mast cell supports for people who are looking for more of that natural root approach. Maybe they don't want to be on the antihistamines long-term. And let's go back because there's a question. Where did I just see it? Oh yeah, here. So the question is, what would you recommend for someone that struggles with the phenolic compound? So the salicylates, like I was mentioning, this is where something like the bicarbonates might be more helpful. Nutrient supports like vitamin D, and zinc, those, it's going to get the top 8 course will kind of go into which ones have those salicylate compounds and which ones don't. So you can kind of learn more in depth about individual ones that you can test and discuss with your provider in there. We also have a low salicylate food list. So there may be things that you can do to kind of on a diet side, reduce your exposure to help bring that down. And something that we see clinically is if there's a salicylate intolerant component, there's often an oxalate component. And so if we can address some of the kind of support the body in processing and detoxing the mycotoxins and oxalates, that salicylate intolerance comes way down. So there are things that you can do on that end. If this kind of feels really overwhelming and you're really not sure what to do next, Stephen, I would suggest doing a strategy session with either Cam or myself, and we can kind of help you with that more personalized individual approach. Okay, let's see. I think, yeah, we're at our live Q&A time. So let's get to some more questions.
I can add a little bit to that salicylate piece while you're searching through the questions, Jamie.
Sure.
A lot of times with the salicylates, mold and oxalates and all of those other things compete heavily for the resources that we need to actually break down and use and excrete those salicylates. So over time, as Jamie was mentioning, pulling some of that stress off of those symptoms and lowering that load can be really helpful. Something else that has been really helpful, and again, this is something you would need to talk to your practitioner about, it's just a general thing, is there was a very small study done where they found that people who took it was 10 grams of fish oil, and in our communities, the fish oil is way too high histamine. So we use SPMs. And when you use SPMs, you need about a third-ish of that. So, maybe 3 to 5 grams of SPMs can really help with that salicylate piece as well. And then just working over time to make sure that, things like sulfation are working, that you're taking care of the mold, that the oxalate piece is being untangled and stuff like that. That's one that does frequently go away once you get to the bottom of it. It doesn't go away fast, but you can get to the bottom of it and make it a lot better.
Yeah. So Cheryl's saying she thinks she has mold issues and MCAS is flaring. She's on steroids and stepping down. I'm wondering if that means she's reducing her steroids. Any recommendations that are natural? So again, Cheryl, without knowing your individual case, we can't give you personalized recommendations on today's call. But generally speaking, our Mast Cell 360 method involves stabilization first. And usually in that stabilization process, we're doing nervous system work, which includes vagal signaling, brain retraining in an order that works for you. We're removing triggers. So we want to know, are you still in mold? If you are in the mold, that's going to continue to keep that mast cell activation syndrome flaring. We want to, the natural supports we went over today, the top 8 course is a great place to start to add in some of the natural supports in place of the steroids. And then opening up those detox pathways. So making sure that you're working on the digestive system, resolving any motility issues, whether that's constipation or diarrhea. So that would kind of be a more natural approach, is nervous system, testing your body for mold to confirm if your body is reacting to mold. We recommend a real-time lab mycotoxin test, which is urinary. It doesn't say that you're necessarily in mold right now, but it shows how your body is metabolizing those mycotoxins and if it's trying to get them out. And that could be a good first clue. And we can kind of give you direction on all of that in a strategy session. So at the end of the call today, I'll let everyone know who is feeling extremely overwhelmed and would like some support on kind of next steps, how you can work with either Cam or I. Okay. Cam, would you take this one?
Sure. Can you take H1 and H2 together with other MCAS supplements, say Zyrtec and Pepsid and trisalts, baking soda, and water? So in general, what we see in the clinic is that most people need layers, right? And some people need those supports daily, as Jamie was saying before, as a bridge while you work on getting what's underneath those symptoms and removing that stress so that you're not having those symptoms in the first place. And then you can start pulling things off. So, yes, absolutely. Most people can take an H1 and an H2 and then layer on some other MCAS supplements as well, for sure. And definitely in a flare situation, right? You can increase things and add additional things that are helpful for you. And just a quick note too, like I was saying before, over time, what we see is that people can often take less of those or get to a point even where they don't have to take them at all. Just kind of depends on the case and how far down that road you can get.
Yeah. Okay, Amy's asking any tips for traveling out of the country and having to eat what you can get. Yeah. For this one, I would definitely say experiment with digestive enzymes prior to, if you don't currently have that as part of your toolkit, as well as additional mast cell supports, making sure you're hydrating as well, are all going to be things as far as the eating piece goes. Even just traveling in general, I like to remind people, can be mast cell activating and cause a flare, even if you like bring all of your own food, but you're traveling, let's say you're traveling in the country and just going back 2 time zones, and then you have a 3-hour time difference, that can feel destabilizing to your body, right? The nervous system seeks what feels normal. So anytime something is not normal, it's going to potentially send off those danger alarms. And so just giving yourself grace and understanding that the flare is more likely to happen. With the travel piece, like I said, even in country, going back 2 time zones, but out of the country, if you're traveling in a different time zone, understanding that the more you can get that natural sunlight throughout the day, it's going to help reset your circadian rhythm and those hormone signalings to where you are at that time. So maybe just some tips there.
Yeah, build in some rest too. Like build in some like a travel day and then a rest day, and don't pack your schedule and things like that. We actually have a really good blog post on traveling with MCAS that maybe Zach can throw in there for you.
Yeah. Oh, Cam, I think this is a good one for you.
Could vitamin patches help when someone can't get the nutrients through the gut that could help calm a flare like vitamin C? So yes, absolutely. One of the things that we do with some people who are so sensitive because they just can't get anything in orally is we can start topically. And if you're reactive to things, that's sometimes you can just test a little bit of it on your skin, dilute it, and test it on your skin to see how you respond to it. That can be incredibly helpful. So I think, ideally, we'd want to get to a point where you can take things orally that support, just because you can get so much more of it in. But even like sulfate, for example, magnesium sulfate, just Epsom salt, and doing that in a foot bath to help support those things. And again, even those things, we start really, really small and just a sprinkle and see how you're going to respond, because it's very easy for people who are so sensitive, like a lot of our community is, to overdo it and actually, make things worse instead of better. So you want your optimal dose is whatever doesn't cause you to feel worse. But yeah, the skin route can be helpful.
Okay. Can going to higher elevation consider taking preventative prescription for altitude sickness, because I'm already so weak, but the meds cause higher blood acidity on purpose? Might it cause a mast cell flare? Are you asking if the elevation is going to cause the flare or the medication? I'm not really sure. I know that elevation I've experienced a flare from altitude. And so, whether it's this medication, you'll need to talk to your healthcare provider on that. But maybe testing it prior to going at higher elevations just to see how your body tolerates it would be my advice there.
Well, and seeing if you can start trying it with just a little teeny tiny amount too. Some things can be broken down and some things really shouldn't be. So talk to your practitioner about that. But in general, when you have sensitivities, just trying a little teeny tiny sprinkle to start off with and see how you respond to it, and well before you actually need to use it when you go.
Does anyone get vertigo as a symptom flare-up? Yes, I have seen people get that as a flare. Is there a test for salicylate intolerance? We typically go by symptom patterns for this one. I don't know of a test. Usually if you're reactive to herbs, so like rosemary, parsley, thyme, if you're cooking with them, mint toothpaste, if you get a reaction to mint toothpaste. And one of the foods higher in salicylates is blueberries. So if somebody's eating a lot of blueberries and reactive, that could be some clues there. We do have a whole blog on salicylate intolerance. But I will say recently, just understanding the salicylate piece, if you've never thought of it and remove them, like I've seen a lot of our clients just, reduce some of the salicylate foods they were eating, and like bright red flushing and hives gone. So it can be very helpful for some people from a flare perspective. And again, just to answer, who should not use quercetin and perilla? People with salicylate intolerance. So go read that blog. All right. Okay. So I'll just note here, because we talk a lot about nervous system support, the vagal nerve stimulators, we've said this on shows before, they use the little pulsing, and that vibration can be activating for some people. So in some cases, these tools are not supportive, and in other cases, they work for people. So this is highly individualized. All right, let's throw this one up. Where do I find a practitioner? Help me. I'm new and getting worse and worse in a flare because nobody knew what it was, had to stop working. I'm really sorry that you're in this position right now. If you are new to all this and really not sure where to go, the best thing to do, in my opinion, and probably Cam's right now, is to jump on a call with either one of us and do a strategy session. So this is our foundational tier. In strategy sessions, we have the opportunity to understand your individual case, learn what you've tried, what you haven't tried so far, and can give you those personalized next step pieces. Our advanced approach is you get health coaching support, as well as meeting with a lead practitioner for that big picture protocol, detox, whatever comes next. And then we also have available to our community emotional support and nervous system support. You can check out our live from last week, where we had Lachey on, who is our emotional support and nervous system coach. So she can kind of give a more personalized approach as well. So those are kind of like our options that we're currently offering. We do have a new offer coming up that we're going to announce later this month at our free webinar. So let me let you guys know about that. We're offering a free webinar, 3 Secrets to Stabilizing Your MCAS, a clear path for sensitive individuals, even when every protocol has failed. It's taking place on Thursday, January 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's 4 p.m. Pacific. And if you register and are unable to attend live, you will get a replay for that. So you sign up for that at mastcell360.com/3 secrets, and we'll be announcing our new offer for the clinic at that webinar. So thank you everyone for being with us today, and we will be back with you next week. Hope everyone has a lovely week. Bye.